Okay, so I just want to preface by saying I literally just created some amazing settings for the S95B. So the comparison that you're seeing with the S95B to the top and the TCL Q7 to the bottom is going to be very different from where you're going to see everywhere else. I still reign as, I'm going to say this on camera and challenge anyone to challenge me on this, the world's best TV settings creator. And again, open challenge. Try it, you'll fail. Okay? And I say this because settings are the biggest part of your television watching experience. And that is exactly why my comparisons are going to yield a vastly different result from those taking their TV out of the box and just running with the default. Manufacturers don't hit like this, and I'm just throwing that out there. Now, that being said, I want to talk about the TCL and what it's doing right, what it's doing wrong, comparatively to the top of the line S95B experience. Now, there is no doubt the winner of this comparison, we're just going to go ahead and just save you the drama and suspense, the S95B. I don't think anybody expected anything different. We did that within a minute of the video, so you don't have to waste your time. Respect and all that, just getting to the point. I like that kind of thing. And if you do, again, smack a like on this video. But you're going to be able to see through a sequence of comparison clips and things like that why I say what I say. Now, again, it's not like the TCL Q7 is bad, as you're clearly seeing in this example. It's holding its own very well in this particular example with the S95B as far as gradients and how it's rendering depth, and I really love what they're doing. Now, of course, it's not on the same playing field, but it's damn good. And again, it's not going to be perfect, okay? Like, I don't think anybody coming in at this price point is expecting truly to arrive at like 100% quantum.oled level, but against the cutting edge technology in the world right now, quantum.oled, QD-OLED, how is it comparing? And you're seeing right here in real time, it's comparing damn good. I mean, now again, obviously my eyes are just glued to the S95B in this particular example because it's the intensity behind the colors due to the pixel level illumination and things like that. However, I'm still looking down and seeing a wonderful, very cinematic image on the TCL Q7, and that is the word I will use, cinematic. While their colors might not be the most vibrant and explosive, they are producing a very, very true to cinema feel, and that is something that is going to be super appreciated by, again, cinema buffs. It's going to be perfect for that experience. Now, again, when you think cinema, you think, Sony, or you think maybe LG, but maybe you don't have LG money, or maybe you don't have Sony money. You don't need that anymore. And frankly, those brands are grossly overrated, living off of their past success, not really having to try as hard anymore as a result of building up their name brand. So I can safely say that they've gone stagnant and kind of lazy, complacent, things like that, where TCL is damn hungry. And we're seeing that here in this example. These colors kicking off on the TCL are impressive. And again, you can go in class at this exact price point and try to find something from Sony or from TCL that's going to produce, or rather Sony from LG, to see if they can have something that would produce this level of quality, and it's just not going to be there to the same extent that you see here. And again, the shadow detail, especially in this scene, amazing, even better than the S95B. So again, it has its merits to where it is just absolutely dominating ahead of the pack, and that's something that I did want to open with at the very least. So let's kick things off by talking about color. To the top, we have the Samsung S95B QD OLED. To the bottom, we have the TCL Q7 QLED. As you can clearly see, the S95B is going to have the better color. And this is kind of what I was talking about when I was mentioning in the review process, the final review specifically, that TCL struggles because of the 94% DCI P3 color coverage. In English, this just means that it is dated. Back in 2000 and even 15, we had TVs hitting higher than 94% DCI P3 color coverage. We had up to like 95 and 96%. And so this is definitely dated as far as color gamut. And that can be seen when you watch certain demos and things like this. Now again, just because it's limited though, doesn't mean that every color is limited and looks terrible, as we're seeing here. Red on the TCL Q7 at the bottom looks really good, and comparatively to like literally the best TV on the market, planet Earth even, for creating really deep, rich reds, it's not that far, well, it's far off, but not that far off to the point where it's like, oh my god, like, it's just the worst thing I've ever seen. No, nowhere close to that. It's a very beautiful red, very rich red, and if you haven't seen the Samsung S95B, you wouldn't really know that you're missing anything. Okay, so now this image kind of speaks more of what we talk about when we talk about skin tones and colors and things like that. Now, there is a bit of a problem with these budget TVs. Typically, when you choose warmer profiles and things like that, things start looking jaundiced, and that is no exception here. You can fix it a little bit, but you have to sacrifice the impact and the overall shock and awe that you're going to get out of the image quality. So it's like you kind of have to pick and choose your battles with these TVs. Sometimes it's going to look better in some areas than others. And that's something with color on a budget television versus, for example, again, the top being the high-end Samsung S95B. You don't really have those same compromises, and as a result, everything just kind of looks really damn good just because that's just how it hits. So that's also something that you should consider throughout this review process here. Now we're going to talk about black levels. At the top, obviously, it's OLED, so there's not really much to say about that. Colors are literally perfect, brilliant, wonderful, great. But at the bottom, you can clearly see that this is a very strong point of the TCL Q7. It's holding its own against an OLED, and I don't really, besides the glare off to the side, really want for much of anything to be improved outside of maybe we can argue color, obviously, because that is a weak point. But in a dark environment, this is what we're talking about. Black levels are good. And I can safely say that, like, looking through and seeing the black levels, it's pretty exceptional. And you wouldn't expect that coming out of this price point and out of this tier. But again, if you remember, back to the final review when I was telling you what you could get out of the local dimming and the contrast ratio, this thing is over 5300 to 1 native contrast, right? And when you start putting local dimming on top of that, you're over fucking 600,000 to 1, pardon my French, but it's damn impressive at this price point. So that's really good, and you end up with something that kind of, again, when you put it up against an OLED, it's not that they're going to be indistinguishable. You could obviously see a difference, but the black level issues of OLED that we keep hearing about, they're just not there to the extent that you would have on something that, for example, didn't have something as aggressive. And again, you can clearly see in every example how the black levels just hold true. And that's what's so damn impressive. I really love the way they render contrast because, at least as far as contrast with local dimming, it just looks so brilliant. You know, you've got bright objects on a black background. It's not a hazed out mess like you'd have on something like the Sony X90L. Yes, that is the TV I'm going to compare this to directly because I truly believe that if it was a toss-up between the Sony X90L and the TCL Q7, you would probably, as far as black levels go, be way better off and should just run to the TCL Q7 because they care more about delivering solid black levels than what you're going to get on Sony. Now, I know a lot of reviewers will say the direct opposite. That is what they say. You're here at Quantum TV, and I'm going to tell you right now, I've got no reason to lie to you. I own pretty much every type of TV you could imagine, and that is the truth. Sony, in some ways, are kind of turning into a budget brand as far as LEDs to promote their OLED line, to say, oh, you want deeper black levels? Well, you can step up into our 85-inch Sony X95L or 93L. Oh, you don't want to do that? Well, then you can just go to OLED. And it's almost like they're creating a narrative that doesn't need to exist, where it's like, if you don't want bloom and haziness, well, then you just go OLED. And the reviewers, if you pay close attention, are starting to echo this toxic mindset that is just so not a thing. And it is brilliant to see that TCL is just kicking all kinds of ass, holding its own with quite literally a quantum dot OLED, which is like the pinnacle of technology in the TV world right now. So if you were worried about black levels, don't be, because as you're clearly seeing, not only are they here, they're here in spades, and it is damn impressive to watch scene after scene, looking at just how well it keeps up. Now again, there are some color differences that we can notice, but honestly speaking, comparatively to the Samsung S95B, I'm not looking at the image and feeling like, oh man, I really just lost all that money, and that's a good feeling. So that is the biggest win I think we could say for the budget market right now. In terms of contrast, as we talk about movies, now this is where things get really interesting. As you clearly see, there is a load more color coming in on the Samsung S95B, depth, three-dimensional quality that draws you in and makes things more immersive, but it's not like the TCL is not holding its own incredibly well in its own right, and it's damn impressive. Again, the word is cinematic. I feel a lot like I'm looking at like a movie theater screen when I'm looking at the TCL with the way the colors are rendered. So it's not the most vibrant, obviously, it's not the most cutting edge, but it is still very cinematic in nature. Again, be mindful that both of these displays have been calibrated, so you're not seeing a stock experience. So if you're somebody that's taking TVs out of the box, again, I must stress it this time, this is not going to be what other YouTubers are showing you that are not calibrating these TVs. Now, Also, this is not what other YouTubers that are calibrating these TVs are going to be showing you, because 9 times out of 10, they're calibrating to the outdated reference standards, where I use something in-house that I created to make these things really reach their full potential. So again, there's something to be said about creativity here and understanding TVs very well to be able to get the most out of the experience you're paying for. Now, again, I have to point out, you don't have to know any of this jargon or any of this nonsense about TVs. Just join my membership. It will literally be $4.99, $5, and you'll be able to see exactly what I'm showing you guys off here. And again, the image at the bottom is damn impressive. It's a very cinematic experience. And going up against the Samsung S95B, I didn't actually honestly expect it to be like that. And so it is really good to see this level of cinematic glory, if you will, coming off of what's considered by many to be a budget TV that, frankly, if you were just to compare it against something like the Samsung S95B, it would be totally unfair. But if you look at a scene like this, for example, it looks so identical that like you'd really have to look at it for a couple seconds to be able to say, oh, okay, no, the S95B is clearer, it's got deeper black levels, a little bit better color, but the cinematic quality on the TCL is just there. And again, that's the word I'm going to use. Now, I love showing this off because this also will show you something. Now, it's a little bit dark on my end, so I'm going to open up my ISO just a hair. Okay, and you're going to see that skin tones actually are better on the TCL than on the Samsung S95B. Now, there is a way around this on the Samsung S95B, if I'm being totally honest with you and just laying it all out there, where you can get better skin tones, but it comes at the expense of color, to where then colors become less than what you'd have on the TCL. So you kind of have to pick your poison on the Samsung, where it's like you're going to choose skin tones and like lessen the color, or you're going to like go vice versa. So for me, I choose color because I really don't care about ambient glow on skin that maybe adds just a little bit more red than I would have liked. But at the same time, that might bother some people. Now again, in the settings, I totally address this when I'm talking about how to go about making and setting up these settings in the membership, so don't worry about that. But as far as the comparison goes, the point of that is just so that you can note that like this is the difference that you can see. As you can see, Rose's face just looks so much better and more cinematic on the TCL, and we can see that continue here in this example as well. Honestly, the TCL is just slaughtering the Samsung in terms of the cinematic quality that's coming out. Now again, the Samsung with the ambient glow, though, you have to understand how ambient light works. You're on a ship, it's a set, it's a movie set in general, so there's going to be some ambient light, and that's what I really appreciate about this. So in terms of like accuracy, maybe it's not the most accurate for people who just want to see what natural skin tone looks like without any of the ambient glow, but I love ambient glow because that's what I look for in my displays. But again, every person is going to arrive at a different conclusion, a different answer, so on and so forth. Like in this example, I love what the Samsung S95B is doing over the TCL. The TCL just looks dead by comparison in my personal view. But again, everybody's taste when we talk about this, particularly the way red is rendered on people and skin tones, that's going to change from person to person. And that's where we really get into this preferential thing where honestly there is no right or wrong answer. It's just what you prefer. But I can say objectively there are things that both are doing that are correct and incorrect as well. So again, some of the things that are just incorrect from a standpoint of color and all that stuff is that unfortunately TCL is still, they're limited in how vibrant they can be. And I think when you're talking about a QLED, that's just the incorrect way to go about producing a quality set, because we buy these sets for their vibrancy and stuff like that, and we're already approaching literally like sub 2015 levels of saturation. That's not good, and you really don't want to do that, especially considering like that's what people are buying it for, like QLED. That's like the whole reason, like quantum dots, over like something that's maybe a crystal UHD at Walmart. So it's something that we have to talk about if we're being fair about these sets. But overall, as you can clearly see in example after example, I mean, the TCL is holding its own, but there are examples where the color just kind of looks a little bit better on the S95B, quite obviously. Sonic being one of the biggest examples I could show you guys. You see Tails here. Again, they go for more of a cinematic look on the TCL, where Samsung is just going for the gold. And I'll tell you right now, looking at this, it's just so damn impressive, especially like highlight placement, the way the green is right now, the three-dimensionality. It's important to note also that a feature that Samsung has that the TCL doesn't is a real depth enhancer. This was designed to compete with Sony's cognitive processor so that it can do real-time depth enhancements on the fly as it analyzes content and things like that. So this is very much a part of the ecosystem. But again, looking at a TV at the bottom that doesn't have that, if I were to ask you which TV has the depth enhancement, you probably wouldn't really be able to render an answer very quickly because TCL is doing a good job keeping up. It is important to note that TCL does have the AI PQ processor, so it still has its own form of AI, but it's just not as efficient. And if we can clearly see here, the brightness level is dimmer now because if you remember what I was talking about in the brightness section of the review, how when it gets to some darker scenes and things like that, smaller windows of peak brightness, you do run into this dimming issue where it goes down to keep the blooming from happening, where again, Samsung doesn't have that issue. And that's going to come into effect in a lot of your cinematics as well. So even though TCL can produce more of a cinematic image at times, it's definitely something you're going to watch or want to watch in more of a darker room environment where the Samsung is pretty much game on in any environment that you could possibly want to put it in. From a motion perspective, I can safely say both TVs are very comparable. The S95B has brilliantly smooth motion, but also the TCL does as well. So even though TCL is going up against a top competitor being Samsung, you can clearly see that they don't have any issues with artifacts or any of the stuff that Sony usually struggles with. Now, it's no secret, I've pointed out Sony multiple times throughout the review process, and I do this multiple times throughout other reviews as well. The reason being is Sony is right now the industry leader, if you would believe, as far as bad motion artifacts, and nobody wants to call it out. Instead, they'll just straight up lie to you and say, oh my gosh, Sony's great for motion, when it's quite the opposite. Now, I will be showing this off in dedicated Sony reviews as well, so don't you worry about that. You'll be getting the transparency you deserve because nobody has time to be lied to by influencers. But what I will tell you is that TCL is still doing a phenomenal job in their own right, and that is impressive. Now again, the colors are a bit muted, and this is going to be something that gamers probably won't appreciate as much, especially once we get to games where we value vibrancy, like again Spider-Man and things that are of a more colorful nature. That's where this whole cinematic vibe of the TCL kind of falls short of being impressive and just starts being annoying because you can't really draw out more vibrancy than what's natively there, and that's where this TV becomes a little bit more limited, and something like the TCL QM8 becomes more of a prospect. So the takeaway is quite simple. The TCL Q7 is a damn impressive television for black levels. It has decent clarity, but it's not going to break the mold anytime soon. And when we talk about its ability to keep up with top-tier televisions, as you're clearly seeing, it definitely does have that, even though it is not what's considered to be a top-tier television. Now, color is a bit dated, as you're clearly seeing when you go comparatively to something that has the top-end, high-end quantum dot filters like we do on the Samsung S95B. But, albeit there's a certain cinematic quality as a result that comes from maybe not having the most intense color that a lot of image purists will appreciate, especially Sony users. This is definitely a look I think a lot of people, again, will come to be very comfortable with. But again, if you want that extra kick and that pop, you might want to go with something like the TCL QM8 or something a little bit more intense like Quantum Dot OLED. But that being said, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And as always, thanks for watching the #1 brand in honesty. Until the next video, I'll see you guys later.